addressing his comment about parents wanting and I wanted to mainly speak on this because I know there's a vote tonight on it, that parents only want the traditional grading because of the familiarity of it. I think that's actually very false and not reflective of what was in the survey. And I also don't believe the survey data was presented accurately or fairly or in its entirety to the board and to the people that were at the meeting last time. But I think parents want the traditional grading because it's giving a reflection of the student's achievement. They want to understand how their students are doing. I believe the administrators know how our students are doing. I believe the teachers know how our students are doing. But the parents and the kids are not understanding their report cards. I mean, my own kids, they're in a class, one kid gets one wrong, gets extra credit, gets 100 on a test. 100 is written on top of the test with a 4 next to it. Another kid in the class gets a couple wrong, 75 is written on the test, there's a 4 next to it. I believe both these children are probably approaching the year-end standard as the standards are met, but they both think they're doing the same, and when they get to high school, those are two very different grades. One's an A and one's a C, and that is, whether or not they understand the material or not, the kids aren't understanding that this kid is here and this kid is here in terms of what it's going to be on their report card and their GPA and everything else. Additionally, in the elementary school, I know a student who is above average, like above grade level in reading. I know a student who's in intervention in reading. They're both getting 3s on their report cards. So I 100% believe the teachers know where they stand and are working with them appropriately. But if two parents are looking at those report cards, to them, both those children are performing in the same manner, and that is really, really confusing. To me, to the children, and everyone. And especially as they move on through to high school, they're not going to understand what's going on, or they're not going to be ready for what's going on, I should say. And my concern, if the vote is to keep standards-based as it has been said over and over again by teachers, by parents, that the teachers and the parents and the students would need training to understand the system. And since it's taken us a year to do this research, I don't understand how that's happening over the summer and going to be implemented for next year, so we're all kind of on the same page and doing these standards-based grades the same way. I believe the survey results that were presented did show that people don't want standards-based, or at least the people that were surveyed, even though that wasn't all the parents in the district. And just on a separate kind of note, I think it's important that we also, for certainly 7th and 8th grade, think about implementing midterm and final exams, because I feel like that is, my kids have no idea how to study, like not at all. They flat out said, like, I don't know how I would study for a test where it covers all this material, but that's happening in high school, and that's when it's going to be 40% of your grade. It can happen in middle school and not count for as much, but they can understand and get those skills and learn what a grade is and what they need to do to get better in doing that. And I feel like I'm all over the place right now, but I think it's really important that these things are taken into consideration, especially in the middle school, because it's perfectly fine to claim success for the achievement of kids that, like it was said last time, coming from good homes, good families who are already good students. We also need to set up the kids that aren't coming from those homes and those families to also be successful in high school. So I'd advocate very strongly to move the middle school to the traditional grading, maybe a hybrid system for behavior, because I truly do believe that's what the majority of the parents and the students actually want as well.
I'll piggyback if that's okay. So if you're going to give public comment, we would just ask that you state your name, your address.
Okay, I've never been to a town.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. So it's a little bit funky rules, but name, address, we ask that public comment be about 3 minutes or less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so.
I'm Haley Hislop. I just moved into 115 Miller Drive. I'm a math teacher in middle school, and I can tell you that standards-based grading causes more problems than it aims to solve, specifically with study skills and keeping track of assignments, being on time with assignments, etc., because students at that age group don't understand what standards-based grading is trying to achieve with helping them on their journey to understand a standard. Instead, they tend to see it as an excuse to not put the effort up front. I'm not saying that's every student, I'm saying on average, they don't see the benefits in the way that standards-based grading was designed to have, which great in theory, super great idea, but as far as the follow-through of the idea, it's not there. So if you do vote to keep standards-based grading, I think training would be beneficial, or maybe a tweak to it if you're able to do that. I'm nervous because my son's going to be entering middle school, and after using standards-based grading, I worry for him to go into a area that uses that as well. So I wholeheartedly agree. Team.
Jill Sharing, 244 Route 165. It's no secret how I feel about standards-based grading. I've made it pretty clear over the months, year. I don't agree with it. I think it is very detrimental to a large majority of our average students. I consider my son to be one of those, my daughter, and that's really what I wanted to speak. She wanted to come here tonight when she found out the decision was going to be discussed or voted on. She actually was selected by Dr. Cornell at NFA, Dr. Seitsinger, Mr. Pickett were there for a student forum, and Preston students got together and were able to discuss the pros and cons of being a Preston student in the high school environment, which she found very beneficial. I will say, again, speaking on her behalf, one thing she felt like, and this completely came from her, we do have open door kitchen, dinner table talks, as we even had today, which is, she's home studying for finals. That's why she's not here, because I wouldn't let her. I said, no, you need to stay and study and get to bed early. But she felt as though sort of her point about standards-based grading wasn't respected to a degree. If you ask her off the cuff, she absolutely prefers the letter-based grading that she's getting at NFA right now, which all of our high school students are getting, as we know. I know that there's talks of a transition. I know that was so years ago as well. I believe Norwich uses standards-based grading, which I don't love because I'd hate to compare Preston schools to Norwich schools, and that's really where I want to leave it. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I just think that mediocre, that exception to mediocrity is really where standards-based grading is. And at the end of the day, I will hold firm to my belief. It is what's best for the district, staff, etc., to hide a lot of stuff. And I don't need to get into it. I'm sure that people understand what I'm saying, but I do not feel it is best for students. My daughter is thriving and doing well. She's in a sophomore math class as a freshman. Only a select few kids from this graduating 8th grade last year are in that class. She's doing very well. She's in all honors, highest honors for 3 semesters and running. Hopefully she continues. But her and my son, very, very different. I have true fears of my son going to high school because of the way in which he's been conditioned academically with standards-based grading. And I think that for probably decades now, many, many, many years, public educators have been led to believe this is what best practice is. And I have to disagree. And I think there's a real large majority of your students who, if they really truly had a voice in all of this, would agree. And I think they're getting buried here with the political back and forth, the parent versus the board, parent versus administration. That's not what it is. We're here for our kids. We're advocating for their best interests. And we see problems. We've identified that there are problems. There are no secrets there, but I'm just trying to really give the students hear a voice, and I had no concerns. I've said this before about my daughter. She's just one of those self-motivated, hold herself accountable with everything. She's, checking her power school daily to see kind of where things are at, but not every kid is like that. That's your 10%. Okay, so if your 10% are going to be fine, and your other 10% probably at the bottom are going to always need support. But there's a vast majority, 60 to 80% of the students are going to somehow struggle transitioning to high school if things continue the way they are, period. So I am not in favor of continuing standards-based grading. I will also disclose I did not take the survey because I was not thrilled that I felt it was procured by an unobjective third party. So I refuse to take it because if you really want raw, real data, you can't tailor it. And I think that was done, and it can be denied, but that's just my thought, and I did not fill out the survey. I feel as though my public comments and attendance at meetings have been enough where that goes. But thank you. I appreciate everyone's attention to this matter. That's all I have to say.
Any other members of the public? Any comments?
I'll just try and make it really fast here. I'm Kelly McNamara, I'm Mill Road as well. I also wanted to comment on the decision that I think is going to be made tonight based on attending last meeting about the grades. I left last meeting feeling a little disappointed, I guess, and maybe it was just how some of the information was presented, I'm not really sure, but I left that meeting feeling really upset, and like it seemed as if a decision had already been made, that standards was the way that we were going to go forward. And it really made me feel like the parent voice, like this whole process that all the parents in our town have gone through was for nothing. And like this whole year was just wasted. And, I am somebody who I'm in a minority. I do appreciate the standards because I do like to know where my child isn't succeeding. However, I have heard from enough parents to understand that something is missing from our report card that does not translate well to the middle school students who then transition to high school. And that by not allowing them to have a grade, it's somehow not translating well for them to understand where their skill set is when they get to high school and they're not succeeding. And I believe that the standards-based grading system should work really well. The research absolutely supports it, but that's in the context of a very robust system where you have rubrics and you're very upfront and forthcoming about how you meet the standard, and I have not seen that, at least for my child. So I would support their adding. I think you could easily achieve what the parents are asking for. I think you could preserve the standards and just add a column, or a row, not a column, add a row, and put the grade in a letter, and then keep the standards next to each subject. I don't think it's a big lift to transform it in that way, and I would hope that you would consider that.
During my update.
Okay. So the consent agenda, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented? So any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, consent agenda is good. And then about indicating the meeting.
I think that because of the testimony, it would be timely just to keep it as is, But
So just for the record, for Jill particularly, because you're taping, I'm going to say to the superintendent of schools. A couple things I'd like to comment. As you know, I always give an update on several things, including things that are on the agenda. We'll get to the agenda in a minute. I think it's important to recognize something that occurred last week, just to clarify the board's stance on a couple of things that may have been misconstrued. At our recent town meeting, it was confirmed that no additional reductions would be added to our budget discussions, so we appreciate that. We also acknowledge that the significant budget reductions that we've gone through the process of. That town meeting was the education side of the town meeting. We extend our heartfelt thanks to the parents, staff, and community members, all who spoke in favor of our current budget situation, and we appreciate that very deeply. During the meeting, though, several comments were made about the town library and the senior center. And while we understand the suggestions to defund the vital institutions may have been, had some good intentions, we want to respectfully disagree with the statements to eliminate both the library and the senior center, to zero out their budgets. As an educational institution, we wholeheartedly support the continued operation of the town library, and we have a great partnership with them. We'd like to continue that. We also fully endorse the essential programming and benefits and services available to the elderly, and we have partnerships with the elderly in multiple places, particularly at the elementary school. I also, you'll hear later on tonight, I won't go into great detail, the People of Preston presentation, which I'll share with you, is directly linked to people who live in town over the years, including elderly who came to listen to students talk about their relatives. So it's very powerful. Couldn't be stated, one additional thought. It was suggested that the board, because during our budget process, that somehow we inflame parents by the difficult budget situation we're in. In my time here, we do exactly the opposite of that. We don't get hysterical. We don't say we're going to cancel soccer and try to get everybody from the soccer field to come and vote. That's not the way we do it. But we do go through a methodical budget process that includes everybody and that comes to our conclusion that we move forward. And we respect the Board of Finance in their process, and we respect the referendum process. We recognize that this is a challenging financial times. We must approach these challenges with empathy and commitment to the entire community. So working together is the only answer, not separating apart, not pitting children against the elderly or seniors, and working together as a team. And we have demonstrated that perpetually, and we're very, very proud of our community, the partnership, the seniors that are in it, and the facilities that are available to them. And I think it's really important to note that, because there was definitely some misconstrued feelings during the town meeting as people left about that, about the board's position related to that. So I think that's really important. Just going to stay standing for a second and acknowledge our two retirees. They're not here tonight. They will receive recognition, formal recognition from the office and from the board. But Sandra Bosco is retiring, grade 5. She started in 1989, and she had taught grades 1, 4, 5, and 8 in the Odyssey program. So she's retiring at grade 5 on June 2025. And we want to just acknowledge and thank her for her service and acknowledge her retirement. Thank you for Sandra. Additionally, Olaf Sigurdardottir, our middle school psychologist, is retiring. She started here in 2003 and has been a school psychologist first part-time, then to move to full-time based on the needs of students. And we're very, very proud of her service and her work here, and she's been an excellent contributor to the entire school environment, the middle school. And she's finishing her career here and also retiring in June 2025. To her, both of them are very humble and didn't want a big show. That's part of the reason they're not here, but we could not go without acknowledging those two folks and moving forward today. Now, we could do the report card presentation that's on the schedule. Do you want to do it now? I feel like
Okay, so I am Courtney Ennis, this is Nicole Sarah, we're of the Board of Ed's Communication Committee meeting. We are going to go through the last presentation that we did last month very, very briefly and expand a little bit about what our findings were and what our recommendations are. I will start out, we didn't make it very clear in the last meeting, our recommendation tonight will be traditional grading. Quick summary of our process. So about a year ago, when we set up our committee, we set out to gather, we went on a fact-finding mission, we wanted to gather information from teachers, staff, and most importantly, students. We have met on a monthly basis, sometimes more than that, to compare data and update each other as where we were in the process, set some goals, set some timelines, and ensure that we were meeting all of those goals and timelines. In the fall of 2024, we had our initial meeting. We formulated questions to send out to the staff survey of all certified staff. We sent the survey out. When the results came in, we were able to analyze and discuss the results. Over the winter, we held a parent forum. I think we had a very good turnout as far as that went. We got a lot of very critical data that helped us form our recommendation. In March, as spring came, we sent out a parent survey after the forum. And then we were able to meet again and compile that information. From April to May, we conducted focus groups with Preston students from Wheeler High School, NFA, and Griswold. In May, last month's meeting, we presented all of our findings to the Board of Ed. Tonight, we would like to give you a little more detail about what those findings were. And here we are tonight, ready to vote. I'm going to go over the standard-based report cards. I know we touched on this last month, but we're going to just kind of go over quickly again. How they work, they emphasize specific learning standards and skills rather than overall subject averages. They provide detailed feedback on student progress in meeting grade level expectations, and they also separate academic performance from behaviors, ensuring clarity in assessment. Standards-based report cards use a numeric or descriptive scale, such as 1 through 5, or not approaching, beginning, developing, proficient, and exemplary. There are benefits, such as clearer insights, provide specific feedback on the strengths and areas for improvement, growth-oriented, focuses on student progress over time rather than a single grade, and then there's actionable feedback, helps students, teachers, and parents understand the next steps for improvement. Challenges are requires adjustment. Parents are unfamiliar with the system and may need additional explanation. Consistency across classrooms, and challenging to ensure that there is uniform implementation. And teachers need more time to assess and report student progress accurately. Just have a few little excerpts I'd like to read from the parent survey. I don't know if they were shared, so I'm just going to read a quick 2 little blurb. One parent wrote that standard-based reporting also does not really prepare students for the number grades they'll be getting in high school. And a separate parent wrote, I have asked teachers for the past several years how are they going to approach grading, and every teacher seemingly gives a different response. Okay, traditional report cards. These are letter grades, A through F. They combine achievement, participation, effort, behavior, and it's simple and familiar. We went over the benefits and the challenges last month. I'm not going to read it all again because I think the parents and the board are pretty familiar with the benefits and challenges. I am going to say some additional benefits are, I did a little research of my own and read a few studies, and they are universally understandable. They're simple and familiar. They are efficient. And there's a perceived objectivity. This form of grading is seen as fair and impartial measure of performance. Additional challenges with the traditional report card is across the board that we have found from staff and parents is that we will need to improve the teacher and parent communications. Some of the community feedback that we received from parents, the current grading system is not accurate for students to see their true grade. Traditional grading simplifies and makes it more tangible for everyone to succeed with. And another parent said, I feel traditional-based grading can eliminate some of the inconsistencies we have seen with standard-based grading. And finally, one parent said, the standards-based grading does not prepare students for high school, particularly since a 75 test result can be a 4. So the students think they are performing well, but that could be a C in the 9th grade. There's also significant inconsistency among the teachers. I have asked teachers for the past several years how they approach grading, and every teacher seemingly gives different responses. One basic example is that some teachers do not give 5s, while obviously others do. If the teachers have different interpretations as to how the grading should work, how can parents and students be expected to understand? The other issue in talking to the community with, we're not there yet.
Nope, I got it.
That made us support the traditional grading was the preparedness for high school. Every high school option for students in Preston is using traditional-based grading. Aside from the parents with this, some of the teacher quotes from our teacher survey, when this standard started, we were told high schools would be following suit. Since they have not, I feel our students are at a disadvantage not learning what real grades are. When our students are applying to high school, are the high schools correctly interpreting standards correctly, especially if there are potentially different interpretations to these standards? And finally, one parent wrote, it's like we are forcing the metric system on everyone when everyone at the next level is using imperial standards. Our kids are at a disadvantage going to high school.
And the last option is the hybrid reporting, which is a blended approach. We did touch on this last month, but I'm just going to go over it quickly. Combines both elements of the standard-based and traditional report cards, but does not fully adopt either system. Includes a letter grade or overall score alongside feedback on specific standards. Aims to balance familiarity for families with the detailed sites of standards-based reporting. Benefits include providing an overall grade while also highlighting the mastery of key standards, familiar yet informative, and challenges, potential for conflicting approaches. There is a learning curve and the complexity in grading. Determining how to fairly balance traditional and standards-based grades can be very challenging. I'm going to read an excerpt from one of the teacher surveys on hybrid grading. I'm not sure how a hybrid model of standards-based and traditional grading might look. However, I worry it would cause some confusion and questions to an already very subjective system of grading. The idea of a traditional report card appeals to me at the middle school level, as I feel it would adequately prepare to translate grades for students for their transition to high school. As my understanding is, many of the sending high schools are traditional grades. Therefore, I wonder if we adopted a similar approach at the middle school levels, it might make this transition easier. And then initial discoveries and recommendations. The preponderance of research advocates for creating and sustaining a standards-based reporting system. However, there are many concerns from the parents throughout the focus group and the survey that they would prefer returning to a more traditional grading. 37 out of approximately 200 middle school parents responded to the survey. 27 parents expressed a traditional preference. 27 teachers responded to the certified staff survey, and several indicated that they had no preference or wish to return to the traditional grading. I think it's important to note that all of our high schools use the traditional grading structure.
Okay, discoveries from our what?
Data collection.
Oh, from our data collection, perfect. Inconsistency was probably the biggest thing. Inconsistencies of understanding and inconsistencies of practicing among staff. I'm not going to read it all to you. I'm just going to make you aware of some other observations that we obtained. Teacher observations that were written in the comment section of our survey. I'm at the elementary level, been here 18 years, and I can tell you that everyone is using the grading system differently. We could all use training and someone to revise the standards. They are too cumbersome at the lower level, in my opinion. Too many standards are packed into one grade, plus the new curriculum does not match the report cards. Another teacher says, I was hired 9 years ago and never received any sort of training regarding standards-based report cards, and basically was set on my own to figure it out. And finally, another teacher says, I have never received training on this report card in all my years, and it has been 10. So I would need initial training, not a refresh. Also, this is geared towards Preston Plains, so I'm not sure my answers are valid because I work at Preston Veterans. We learned a lot about the inconsistencies too when we met with the students. Dr. Singer and Mr. Pickett can speak more towards the students at Wheeler and NFA. I went to the focus group at Griswold. As much as the students are doing well, I kind of pushed for them to discuss the grading system and how prepared they felt. They all agreed that the traditional grading is easier to understand. They're at a level where they're checking PowerSchool on their phone, which we probably wouldn't get in the middle school, but they're able to look constantly and see exactly how they're doing, what grades are in, what they need to get in, what they need to do to improve their grade. One of the students, she stated, with traditional grading, I always know where I am in class. Another student said, it is so much easier to understand how I'm doing as well as what I need to do. When asked about the grading and study skills, unfortunately, one of the students said, I could always get by without studying in Preston. Another student says, I never studied in Preston. And another student said, I'm always going to pass in Preston. When asked about preparedness for exams, the quote was, not at all. The students across the board said they did not know how to study. So our final recommendations. Obviously, we would need to switch over to traditional report cards. I want to make it very clear, the standards do not go away. These are federally and state mandated standards. They do not go away. Obviously, we need staff training about grading and study skills. improved parent communication. We have started working on a report card. I would like to give the board a copy of, this is a very, very rough working draft, but of kind of what we have in mind. So just so you know, it gives a letter grade, a percentage grade, and then the standards. And with that being said, I just have a couple more handouts for everyone. Just some more support. Thank you. You're welcome. Yep. There you go. So I guess our recommendation tonight is to switch the middle school only to traditional reading. You know, just reaching out to the community and the staff members in the school, this is where the evidence points. This is what's wanted, this is what's going to be more efficient, this is essentially what our kids need. You know, and in the handout, I'll just say, it's truly amazing that students are asking for more. They want study skills, they want to learn to study, they want exams, and they want to keep pushing forward. And I think as a board and as a school system, we owe it to our children to allow them to excel.
Do I pick up a few things that we need to make sure that we also identify? Just at the bottom, we do have to review, if the board goes forward with the report card as changed, we have to review policies, make sure everything matches up. There's multiple policies that apply, not just one. And then we should follow up in a year and make sure we reassess our progress. And one of those policies, for example, is how do we deal with retention? If we go to an ABC system, there's a possibility for failure. If failure is treated the same or not, it's just we have to build the strategies in to make sure that folks are being treated fairly as far as the grading systems go. That will be built into the training, built into parent communication, and make sure that it all fits together. It's the report card, as you see as a model, doesn't give up on standards at all. As a matter of fact, under each category, all the major standards are listed, and we will make, this is a draft, obviously, we'll make some modest adjustments based on the two new curriculums we just pulled in the last 2 years, particularly the math one that just came in. So, but you might ask if the superintendent supports this, and I want to say yes, and here's why. Thoughtful committee work, it took a process, it guaranteed as much opportunity for inclusion and speaking to as many people as possible. And that's really important because we had an 18-year tradition that had to be addressed, and it was addressed. And it was very thoughtful and methodical and detailed. And I think that that's very important. It's not something you can just arbitrarily move on. The data was collected, it was thoughtfully presented to you more than once. We listened to voices, parents, community members, educators, and primarily students. I want to just underline one other thing. Really, truly enjoyed talking to all the high school kids. They were awesome. They are not failing. None of them are failing. They all adjusted. They all are really outstanding humans. But they did talk about the adjustment that had to happen from 8th grade to 9th grade and learn how to deal with that. They adjusted and moved on. But I think if we can do something about that, I think that's really important. To smooth that transition, high school is difficult enough. We also, I want to just support some comments that Nicole and Courtney both made. We are not going to give, in my humble opinion, I don't think it's a very prudent thing to do at all, to give grade, phone, and power school grade to phone information in the immediate to middle school students. High school students can manage it. They can process it, they can move on, but using Power School to immediately send a grade to a student in middle school is not an appropriate strategy. And I think we kind of agree with that, just a little bit too much stress on the students. But other than that, I mean, those are the main points, and those are covered, and we're making the recommendation. The administration and the teachers are actually responsible by policy for finalizing the design of the report card. But I support the recommendation of the committee. And I think it would be appropriate to ask Mr. Pickett too. So, go ahead.
And I too support the shift, just so that we're able to kind of provide a smoother transition for our students as they go into high school. That's our goal here, is to make sure that they are successful at every step of life. Additionally, it's very important that we are able to communicate clearly with families, and I think that's another facet that really we want to make sure is crystal clear going forward.
And I think too, I might just add as a parent, we only surveyed 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade parents. We did not survey elementary school parents. As parents of elementary school children, and we're in the classrooms all the time, as we kind of started talking about the grading with parents, almost every parent in the elementary school said, "You mean they still do this in middle school? There's no grades?" So it's been very eye-opening, I think, for parents of younger children. I think a lot of them wish we had surveyed them as well on their feelings, but the majority of elementary school parents don't even know that we still have standards in middle school.
And we do have standards in middle school.
That we have standards in middle school, and then they're not getting letter grades.
So, I mean, that's the formal recommendation, Madam Chair, and we can vote to approve on that. There were several steps, I'm just making that recommendation, there were several steps that will have to kick into gear, the policy report, the finalization and the manufacturing of the report card, because it's engaged, it's a software matter, it has to go through an adjustment process in Power School to be able to be used next year, and you should. No, I don't. No. So, that's where we stand. That's where we're at. And now to defer to the board for action.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, comments? Well, do you want to discuss it all first, or do you want to?
Someone would make a motion, and we would have discussion on the motion, or, we can discuss it if you want, first.
Do you want me to make a motion?
You should do a motion just to make it clean and then have discussion.
All right, are we calling it a traditional report card, or are we calling it a hybrid? Because it is
Technically speaking, this is, we talked about this, we're using traditional grading, but because of the inclusiveness of the standards on the document, it's a modified hybrid model. Because it's not pure hybrid, in a pure hybrid model, each standard would also have a grade, 1, 2, 3, and we are not doing that. So
it's traditional with notes.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with that. Yep. With standard notes, yeah. Yep.
I guess, so do I have a motion to accept the adjustment to the report card to reflect traditional grading with standards listings?
Or who?
For grades 6 through 8, Preston CT Middle School. So moved. Second. Any discussion?
Why not 5th?
Middle school.
When we set out to do the project a year ago, we had agreed it would be 6th through 8th. Our recommendation was kind of let 6th grade ease into traditional grading and then start midterms and exams to help prepare 7th and 8th graders. We didn't survey any 4th grade parents whose children would be going into 5th grade. It's kind of beyond the scope of what our survey did, but.
And I think it keeps consistency at the elementary school. Like, we don't want to have two different kinds of report cards. I don't think it's easier to just make the separation.
I thought you surveyed all the way down through.
No, we
You
only
didn't survey 5th, you only surveyed 6th through 8th.
5th grade parents who are, the kids are going into 6th.
Oh, going into.
6th,
Okay.
yeah.
you anticipate this being fully up, ready to go? One of the conversations that is had over and over again in this conversation is that, or one of the points, I guess, that's made is that teachers aren't trained to use our evaluation system. And so it feels like there's a really strong danger of that repeating itself if we are rolling it out without enough time to train people to use it.
Couple of things. First of all, the manufacturing presentation will be timely enough to be able to start in the fall. So that should not be an issue. Secondly, you've seen and heard that there's an inconsistency of practice. So, and that honestly, as people, adults teaching, all of us have experienced traditional grading. All of us. Less of us have experienced standard grading. So I think the training is going to be less difficult in the traditional model because of familiarity. So I don't think we have some training opportunities already built in, and I don't think it will be overwhelming for people to understand that part. So I don't think it would, I think approving it now, allowing over some of the manufacturing approval by the administration to get going, it will not be restricted for this model.
So you'll have it ready for the first report card in November?
Yes.
It should be ready for the start of school in September.
Right, but
Yes, but yes, as far as, going out to the world, yes. November.
Just to kind of piggyback on that too, the training for a new grading system that's more familiar might be easier because they all need to be retrained on standard-based grading as it is because they're all doing it differently. So there's retraining either way.
How do we make sure, okay, we have the standards, it exceeds year end, meets year end, blah, blah, but you said we're not grading the standards.
No.
So how do we come to, what is the guideline for meets year end expectations then? If you're not looking at each of the standards in and of themselves, how do we get to, approaches, needs and all that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, hold on. I don't know if Christy, you want to say anything, but remember that the standards don't go away, and we assess them through the SBAC, and they're incorporated directly into the curriculum. They're there. They actually guide instruction. I know you know that, so what I'm saying. They actually guide instruction. So the grading, this trimester, 3 grades, and that process shouldn't inhibit or confuse anybody. We will not be grading the standards underneath it, but they will be driving the instruction to get the A or the B in each trimester.
So is that going to be based on homework, tests, whatever? I mean, are we having homework? And will it be consistent amongst teachers is my concern.
Well,
so what you're grading, an A includes homework? Does it include effort?
yes. The answer is the consistency of practice, like with the policy reviews, like I just mentioned, will have to be adjusted because what we must ensure, and what we heard universally, it's not like it's exactly what was reported, too inconsistent. Lots of changes in staff, not enough review and frequency of training led to this, and that's where we are. So that will be adjusted, and there will be an expectation of no inconsistency. For example, let's just say that we say for every major grade, topic area, must include grades and homework. That would be a standard that every single teacher will be expected to comply with, right? And or we might create a report card that somebody has some kind of separate line for that, but they still get their grade. We're going to create a criteria that every single teacher must follow. I guess that's a short answer.
It is, and that's my question, because that is my concern over how those letter grades can be different. for
Teacher to teacher.
Different teachers.
That's
exactly.
correct.
I mean, there are some teachers who will never give an A+, because an A+ means it's perfect. So you know what I'm saying? So
Yes, I do.
for that to represent what we want it to represent, we have to make sure that teachers understand that means a specific thing. Yes, you are going to count homework, or no, you're not going to count homework. Or effort Like down below, you've got social development and learning skills. Is effort been
So,
going there?
just remember, this is a draft, not the final. But we would not put behavior in the grade.
So that's effort.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be second.
I really like the idea of it. I think it's great. I'm just a little confused. I just hope it's not terribly confusing. No, I'm sure the training will help, but that I just want the A to be what the A should be.
I hear you,
Yeah.
and I agree with you
From one grade to
100%.
another, one grade to another, and so forth.
I can tell you as a parent, there is nothing more confusing than the report card we're using right now.
And I will say that, but I still want to make sure that because of past history, I always use traditional grading, of course, you know, as a teacher, but it was very clear that my A or my B was not exactly the same as my partner's A or B's. And because we didn't have that consistency, it's kind of left to the ideas of what a teacher thought that should go into that grade. That's wrong.